Hi everybody, Tom March here, and I'm taking you into a deeper dive into a WebQuest as a way to explore their potential and the variations that you can work with. So this is one that I developed for primary students because people were asking about it. Can young students do WebQuests? And it's not the kind of thing that you'll have them sitting down in front of computers for necessarily, but that, as I've mentioned here, it's teacher guided. Okay, and so we'll see how that sort of brings itself to life. My goal in this short video is to introduce you to this particular WebQuest, but also secondarily, I haven't updated it for a while in terms of the links and things like that. So if you let me know in the comments section after this video or email me, then I'll certainly update them and do some tweaks to bring it up to date. Okay, thanks. So let's take a look. I've looked at the previous another video about the parts of a WebQuest, and so they would be things like the introduction, the question, background, perspectives, group synthesis, real world feedback, and conclusion. Right. So let's explore how those things work out within the big wide world WebQuest. Okay, so let's just jump right to that. All right. So again, this is teacher guided. And so my thinking was it would probably be a mix of perhaps a teacher leading discussions and then students going back to do some work. Now, this depends on your students and their reading ability, their ability to work independently, and just how you like things to operate in your classroom. But let's just sort of take a look at it. So let me give you the inspiration for this, and that will help you understand it, I think. So we live out in the country, as you can see over my shoulder, in New South Wales. And one of my children, a long time ago, attended a rural school, little two-room schoolhouse. And we did an excursion in the area, what we call a field trip is an excursion here. And so we walked into the farmland and we noticed a lot of things. And when we came back, it got me thinking about, there's a big wide world out there. So why don't we use a WebQuest to help students grapple with some of the bigger elements of how the world works? And so I won't go through every aspect of this WebQuest, but certainly the key elements. So we have to get into the big question, and the task is, how about this big wide world, huh? How does it all work? Okay, and what do we mean by that? Well, it's based upon different perspectives, right? Different roles. And you can see them up here with the graphics, right? That we're going to look at how the globe works as a sort of a astrological entity that relates to a lot of different elements, how plants are in the world, animals, people, cultures, and languages. And so we could look at that by going into the roles and going to each individually. So just as a way to take an example of that, when we're talking about the globe, it says, where is the Earth? How does the movement of the Earth change our lives? How does where people live on the globe impact their lives? And then we're going to have the students make up 1 to 3 rules that tell us about how all this works. So that's their job. So trying to keep it simple into, here's some basic questions. A teacher could use one or all of those questions, and then some links. And the notion here about making up rules is the key. And rules are really some of the highest order kinds of thinking, right? Because you have to have a good conceptual understanding to relate that. And they're essentially if-then elements. So, because X, Y, and Z happen, there seems to be a pattern here, then we expect this to be an outcome, okay? So some examples here. You will get cavities if you eat if you spend a lot of time eating too many sweets and then don't brush your teeth, right? X, Y, Z equals. Someone will get hurt or something will get broken if you keep wrestling so wildly in the living room, inspired by my 2 sons. To become really good at something takes practice, determination, and a sense of enjoying what you're doing. So these are quote unquote rules, right? And so the goal is for students, however imperfectly, to make up rules about what they're seeing in how the globe works. And then we've got links here that show things like seasonality, time zones, etc. And then we've got things for plants. And the idea here is that, basically, hint, hint, right, where they are in climates and biomes, is related to how the globe is and temperature and things and precipitation, etc. And so we see different kinds of plants in different places. Similarly, do animals feed off those plants? Okay. How do they evolve? And how are different peoples, responding to their environment? Ultimately, with the notion of cultures, because, what is grown there, what animals are there, how they're used, what the climate is like, leads to the development of houses and clothing and foods and things like that. And then a little bit of a stretch, mostly because I wanted students to understand that out in the big wide world, people speak a lot of different languages. Okay. So that's the chance for individual students or pairs of students or even a little group to work together to explore those links and to come up with 1 to 3 little if-then rules. Now, how do we bring that together, right? Because as I've mentioned before, the key in a WebQuest is not just to find out cool facts, and already we've ramped it up a level by making rules. Now we're going to have students work together. So as we talked about those different roles or perspectives, you can see, this is not for students to read, this is for the teachers to see the aha. This is the kind of really big picture thinking that students are doing. And what it does is it allows the students to set up this grander schema within their semantic network. So as new information, things, okay, this is history and in science we've got botany, we've got astrology, and all these different elements, can now start to find some connection, right? There's conceptual cohesion going on there. So we're not looking for students to necessarily learn great facts, but to create that grand schema, okay? So to do that, I created a little scaffold, a relationship wheel, I call it. So we have the 6 elements here, and the task for the group, once they come back together again, and it could be led by the teacher as a discussion, or it could be done, by upper primary students and really grappling with it. That'd be great. It's whatever works for you and your students. So, we're going to have the student or the team or the group of students who focused on animals explain how they think animals might have something to do with each of the other elements. Similarly, how do plants relate to all the other elements? And how do people and culture? So that kind of thing, right? And some marry up perfectly, that let's say, how the globe is and the climate will affect, what the cultures are developing, what kind of plants are there, perhaps what kind of animals are there. Not necessarily the language. Language is a little bit of the outlier intentionally, so that it's not all nice and neat for students, but they have to stretch and make some hypotheses, because that's what we're after here. All right, so that's what the goal here, and it's step by step right the way through. And once they've done that group process, I just simply go to a conclusion, and it's again helping students understand what they've learned and this sort of one grand theory idea. Okay. And there's a rubric involved there that'll help teachers understand what it is they're working towards, some information, their ability to work together, etc. And there's a teacher's guide. Okay, so that's a deep dive into the Big Wide World WebQuest for, I'd say, upper primary. And again, I would love for you to say, oh, that's of interest to me. I'll certainly do that with my students, especially if they're working from home with isolation going on and remote learning. This gives them a way to work collaboratively, which is sometimes a real key to, making distance learning more valuable and more real, simply rather than just completing packets. So if this is of interest to you, definitely get in touch, because I would love to, go through and update these links. And actually what's really exciting to me is these are probably 10-plus-year-old links, and I know there's a lot more interesting, engaging, dynamic, interactive kinds of websites that would be out there. So subscribe to this this YouTube channel. Use the comments to let me know if you're interested, or simply go through my website, tommarch.com, and the contacts page there to get in touch. All right, thanks everybody. Hope you're having a great day and that things are going all right for you. Cheers. Bye.